Hey guys, it's time for another transmission from the astrologer Lovelxce. Today, our eye falls on the singer Danileigh. She is also known for having children with DaBaby. Recently, she was arrested for a DUI in Miami Beach and a hit and run on a moped rider. The rider suffered serious injuries, but survived. The New York Post reported, police said that her car reeked of alcohol and that her motor skills seemed sluggish. Danileigh told officers that she was returning from a Memorial Day party and denied hitting anybody or drinking any alcohol that night. However, 2 breathalyzer tests reportedly revealed she had blood alcohol levels nearly twice the legal limit. Officers also found an empty bottle of tequila in the back of her car. This reading is for educational and entertainment purposes and is the interpretation of an astrology chart created for a situation. So, what do the stars say about her energy and this situation? Let's take a look, but first, let's define the players in our story. Capricorn is rising. That makes Dani represented by Saturn in this chart. Her travels in her car are represented by Mars. The authorities are represented by Mars. The person she injured is represented by the Moon. Dani is Saturn in Pisces. In our recent reading on Chris Sean Rock, she was also represented as Saturn in Pisces. However, here, we're not mainly talking about a person who is maturing and turning to religion. Pisces represents the influence of alcohol, and Saturn, the coldness and apathy of drunk driving. There can be other messages here, but we're not here to speculate on possible alcoholism. Saturn is doing poorly in this chart and about to go retrograde. So, instead of the normal maturity and discipline Saturn represents, in this situation, Dani exhibited the opposite of Saturn energy: recklessness, overindulgence, and irresponsibility. Perhaps as well, excessive coldness. Aside from her incident, Pisces shows her as a person very interested in whatever Venus represents in this chart, and to a degree, what Venus represents in general, as well. From her Instagram, you can tell she is very much into fashion, appearances, looking beautiful, expressing her femininity, Venus things. Indeed, she is gorgeous, and an example of a beautiful Sagittarius-born woman. Venus represents in this chart legal issues, traveling, partying, home life. Performing and creativity, her children. At the time this chart was made in late May, Dani's highest concerns are these things. On a darker note, Pisces ruler Jupiter owns the 12th house. The 12th house is partly ways that we hinder ourselves in life, secrecy, and restraint. The restraint shown here we see is how she has been silent on social media since the incident, likely at the advice of her legal counsel. She has not posted publicly since May 2nd, and appears to have deleted posts around the time of the incident, as a news outlet reports a post of hers hours before the crash, which is now gone. This strong 12th house influence in our meaning likely shows her feeling humbled, if not humiliated. A commenter on her Instagram post asked 8 weeks ago, on one of her last public posts, "So are you gonna say something about the handicapped man you almost killed because you were drunk?" That post is also now removed. To be clear about his comment, no news articles appear to describe the moped rider as handicapped at the time, but maybe this commenter is referring to him possibly being handicapped now, or embellishing. Despite the terrible incident, 2 friendly stars grace the ascendant. Acela is here, a star portending friendship and happiness, and Nunki. Nunki is another fortunate indication, said to be fortunate for travelers at sea. It's said, one may travel long distances and it may give you the ability to speak very effectively on business, faith, or international topics. Interest in long-distance travel and in ships and airplanes. A manifestation of this may be Danileigh's social media posts about her various trips. Clearly she has an interest in these things, and the way she successfully reaches millions of followers. Intuitively, we feel the star Acela showing how she will still have people on her side, friends and fans, despite what she did. Chapter 3, The Incident. As a reminder, Dani's fateful trip in her vehicle is represented by Mars. Mars itself is known as a violent planet and to indicate violent accidents and mishaps, especially those involving cuts. We see Mars in the house belonging to the victim. The stars confirm damage coming from Dani to the moped rider through her ill-starred trip. The Daily Mail reports. The victim was taken to Ryder Trauma Center in Miami where he was treated for non-life-threatening injuries, including a kidney laceration and a spinal fracture, end quote. Mars is in Leo. What could Leo represent? Leo likely describes where this incident happened. It happened in hot and fiery Miami. It may also speak of her high-profile car and the entitlement with which she drove it. She was reported to cops for driving recklessly in her Mercedes-Benz, weaving through traffic, as many other entitled drivers tend to do. Perhaps Leo shows entitlement and stubbornness. She did not stop when she hit the moped rider, and even when signaled to pull over by law enforcement, it is reported that she initially refused to stop. Billboard reports, one witness told police that multiple people attempted to get the driver's attention and advised her that she was dragging the moped. However, the driver never stopped, according to the report. Aside from that, Leo is associated with the following body parts in astrology: the heart, blood and cardiac system, the back, spinal cord, and sides of the body. The incident itself may be shown by Mars separating from a square, which is a difficult aspect, to Jupiter, ruler of her house of vices, the 12th house. This shows a destructive trip that would get her in trouble, and a recent one, as the aspect is only about 2 degrees. This chart was made on the evening of her arrest. The victim's planet, which will represent them here, is the Moon, and Dani is Saturn. Physically, the Moon is much smaller in size to Saturn, echoing how the victim was the weaker and more vulnerable one, as he was on a moped, and she was in a presumably well-built luxury vehicle. Lastly, Saturn is in the moped rider's 8th house of death. Saturn represents Dani. This shows how she was a threat to his life. Does the chart tell us about anything leading up to the event? Of course it does. Venus, the planet of love, sits in the victim's house. Well, we're not talking about love here. It's important to know in these types of charts, meanings of planets will change according to the situation and house rulership of the planet. They are colored by this. Venus rules the 5th house, the house associated with parties, having fun. Local 10 News reports, police said Curiel, who said she was coming back from a Memorial Day party, told officers that she never hit anyone and hadn't consumed any alcohol, end quote. Likely she was having irresponsible fun and consumption gone too far. Astrology-wise, Venus trine Neptune is a compelling argument that she indeed was partying with alcohol. The insidious star, Algol, lies at the 5th house cusp, indicating evil and destructive energies and insane behavior. Algol, the star from which alcohol gets its name, is commonly associated in modern times with drinking too much and losing your mind. We're not insinuating Danileigh is an evil person, but discussing the energies in her situation. Continuing, this presence of Algol, in turn, shows Venus to have a mostly negative indication in this chart. Indeed, Venus in the 7th house shows a dangerous woman to this moped rider. Interestingly, for the moped rider, Venus rules his house of small trips he would take around the city on his moped. Thus, we can confirm and see that Dani's partying was deeply connected to the man's misfortune, and again it's shown, a dangerous woman connected to his trip on the road. Venus represents other notable things in this chart, but we'll leave it at that for now. Chapter 5. Salvation from Death? Are there fortunate indications here of a life spared from a grisly death by the hand of vicious Mars? We subscribe that there are. Even though Jupiter rules the 12th house, it's a naturally fortunate planet, and from Lovelxce's experience, can still show good along with bad. Here, Jupiter is powerfully situated at Dani's 4th house, which is the victim's 10th house, and joined to the North Node, which is associated with good luck, and when a planet is joined to it, said to describe life-changing or fateful situations. Speaking of the North Node, it itself is relevantly joined to the star, Sheraton. Sheraton, in the constellation Aries, the ram, means a sign in Arabic. It is associated with violence. Danger can come to those who act in a reckless, impetuous, or careless manner. These things show, all things considered, in the end, a fortunate ending for Dani, that she did not kill someone with her recklessness and surely ruin her life completely, and that the moped rider would pull through and be successful, perhaps, blessed by the divine. The Moon, the moped rider's planet, and Venus, which represents his trip that day, partly have a positive relationship as the Moon is in Libra, and Venus is in Cancer. This configuration, known as mutual reception, in astrology, is fortunate and another indication of things not going completely horrible for him. For the writer's sake, we hope it stays that way. What will be Danileigh's relationship with the law? The authorities are also Mars in this chart, as Mars rules the 10th house. With Mars ruling Dani's trip that day too, this planet sharing suggests them deeply connected. It is true, as the authorities were there during her trip. This connection demonstrates how they are fully aware of how she was at fault, and obviously, this will work against her. Scorpio is not a good sign over the 10th house, suggesting a turbulent time dealing with the authorities. Pluto, who also represents the 10th house, is retrograde in her first house, and we'd expect her to have turmoil with the authorities, especially with the South Node, a marker of damage, at the 10th house cusp in this chart. If not, then what we are seeing here is the damage to her reputation. We wonder if she will get off easy despite these negative indications. Prison for Dani is Jupiter. With Dani's planet in Pisces, imprisonment should take a hold of her, but the good fortune we advised shown for the victim by Jupiter may extend to her as well, suggesting an easier, lighter sentence than may be deserved. For example, she only spent hours in jail since the incident. She allegedly committed 3 felonies that morning, yet was out by that afternoon. Additionally, Jupiter with the North Node, at Dani's 4th house, the 4th house representing her home, makes us wonder if she will be sentenced or participate in house arrest instead of hard, difficult time. So, we're getting some mixed messages of a bad time with the law and also some positives, so we'll have to see how it plays out. In traditional astrology, when testimonies cancel each other out, it's suggested we may not be able to get an accurate read. Finally, what will be the aftermath for the victim and Danileigh? Let's take a look. The moon will give a clue, and in this chart, is in a square to Venus. Aside from it representing difficulty for the moped rider, this also shows legal issues between Danileigh and him. But, with the partly positive relationship between the moon and Venus we explored earlier, this is a suggestion of them coming to a good understanding. Mars in the 7th house has another indication regarding the law. It shows the law on the moped rider's side, especially as they were there to witness her drunk driving. It should also show a lawyer invested in helping him, perhaps male, and legal action. Since Mars is associated with injuries and damage, we wonder if he will get himself a good injury lawyer. Danileigh's career, reputation, and status will suffer greatly, as you would imagine. This confirmed by Scorpio over her 10th house, and the South Node at the 10th house cusp. Why? Because Mars, the traditional ruler of Scorpio, rules the 3rd house, it is because of her trip. If we look at Mars solely as her career and reputation, with Mars in Leo, her reputation suffers greatly for the long term, especially with Mars square the midheaven. She won't be shaking this off for a long time, if at all. The sign of Leo has a negative relationship with Saturn, and this is another indication of ill repute. Her midheaven is also joined to 2 Greek lots, which show themes at play: danger, violence, and debt, and occupation, severity, and destruction. Very ominous messages. The midheaven is also joined to the Greek lot, number of brothers. Danileigh's brother appears to have also contributed controversy to her image, for fighting Da Baby in her honor, and we wonder if that is what this Greek lot is hinting at here. Mars in the 7th house, in the context of her career, shows the moped rider having great power over Danileigh's reputation and career. Venus in the 7th house also shows him having power over the future of her music. By power over her, we mean that due to this incident with him, he has powerful indirect influence over her life. The moon is trine Dani's 2nd house here, and this is one indication of money from Dani going to the victim. A much stronger indication of this is the ruler of the part of fortune, which represents wealth and success, Venus, in the moped rider's house. With the evil influence of Algol and the strong position of Jupiter we described earlier, this should show wealth coming his way by terrible means. What about Dani's fanbase? They are represented by Mars, and fans of her music specifically are Venus. They too as a majority look to side with the writer long term, well aware of her shortcomings. If we look at the hidden placements of Venus and Mars, however, it looks better for Danileigh. With Mars's shadow placement at the 5th house cusp, they still love and are invested in her music, but this drunk driving situation looms heavy over them as well. Dani has a 5 million fan base on Instagram, so we are curious to see how her fans receive her once she is active on social media again. Lastly, for Dani, the applying Jupiter sextile Saturn aspect here says she is not done dealing with the law or imprisonment yet. Her specific felony charges: leaving the scene of a crash with serious bodily injury, driving under the influence, and damage to property or person. We expect legal developments within or around the next 3 to 4 months. That's it for our reading on Danileigh's arrest, and how she likely moves forward. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe.